Hi, I'm Tim Boss and I'm from ShareRing. Thanks for joining me on another training session. This time we're going to be leveling up a little bit and actually diving deep into how to create code that sits between ShareRing Link and third party systems. In this case, what we're going to be demonstrating is how to use Sharing Me app to check into a hotel. This is a very much heavily requested feature, and one of the great reasons why is because it will save a huge amount of time for our Sharing Me users and any guests at the hotel that download our app to basically check into a hotel. The system that we're integrating with in this one is a company called Cloudbeds. Cloudbeds are probably or easily one of the top five hotel property management systems globally. They've got their systems integrated into thousands of small, medium, and large hotels around the world. And I guess one of the great things about Sharing Me is that it allows anyone from anywhere in around the world to be able to check into hotels that are integrated with Cloudbeds and Sharing Link. The integration with other systems other than Cloudbeds is just as easy as what I demonstrate in this. In this example or demonstration, we're using just JavaScript code to create a server and receive the data, translate the data, and put it into the third party property management system. In a real world example, there would be probably a lot of things that I would do differently in production. I would probably be using more serverless code on Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services to process this. Obviously, all of the data would be encrypted, it wouldn't be at rest. Unencrypted, like in the examples that I show now. So, this is obviously just done for demonstration purposes. The data would always be encrypted until it goes to the database at Cloudbeds, and then it would be stored in their encrypted database as well. So I guess we should get started. And the things I'm going to go through today really are step one, how to set up the environment. So in this example, I'm running a home server. If this is something you want to follow along with and create your own server, what I'm doing is I've got a home server that's basically running a Linux system. So the version of Linux is called Ubuntu. I've also got a router with firewall settings that open it up for port 443, which is the HTTPS or SSL port, to go through to my Ubuntu server. And I'm using something called NAT, which is network address translation, to translate from port 443 to another port on my Ubuntu server. The other thing I'm doing is, instead of having a IP address that I'm using in this, I've signed up and I'm using a domain name from noip.com, and basically using that because it makes things a lot easier. And the other thing that we need to do is set up a SSL. So in this case, I'm using Let's Encrypt, which is a free SSL service that you need to basically refresh or get a new SSL every 3 months. So very, very good for development as well. So let's get started. To make the development process a lot easier for us, the first thing that we want to do is create a simple webhook server that will just receive data from the Sharing Link system and present it in the console. The reason why we want to do this is, obviously, Sharing Link, as it sends data through, the values or the variable names will be different to, say, Cloudbeds or any other systems. Every other system basically has their own sort of values or variable names that they create. So best practice is really to create this web server, do some tests on it to sort of test the data that comes through and see what the variables are, refine your Sharing Link query a little bit, and basically start to. Here's some code that I've created earlier. This is actually really simple code, and it's easy to copy this code here. So basically, all I'm doing first is just making sure, and this is in JavaScript, so I'm using Node.js for this. I'm using Express for my development, and these are basically just some of the requirements that I need in here first. As I mentioned, I'm creating an Express app. I'm receiving data on port 3000 on this server. So what happens is my external firewall will take the data through from port 443 and then translate it to 3000. And all I'd need to do here is really set up a webhook. That's pretty much it. So the webhook, um, the directory on the webhook will be /webhook. So it'll be the domain name /webhook. I'm actually using a service called, I think, NoIP, which is basically just allows me to quickly and easily, for free, set up a domain name that can be accessible instead of using IP addresses. It's just a lot more convenient. Next, I set up the Let's Encrypt key. So just for the purpose of this, instead of running a actual web server with SSL, all I'm doing is just pulling in the files from Let's Encrypt in there, and then start the server and start listening. And it's as simple as that. So let's show you how that works. So I just run it, and you can see on the screen it says webhook server listening at that location. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, what we next want to do is log into ShareRing Link, and what I'll do now is just basically use my ShareRing app to log in. As I've mentioned before, ShareRing Link and all of our other internal tools support something called OAuth 2, and that allows us to log into those systems with no password, simply using our Sharing Me app, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. And I've just scanned the QR code and it's logging in. So on the screen you can see the queries that I've already created within ShareRing Link. I'm not going to go into any depth at all with how to create queries in ShareRing Link. There is another video for that. I'll add a link down below so that you can see the other video about how to do that. So what I've done here is I've already created a query for hotel check-in. So if I open that, you can see the details. Thanks for checking in. Collect your key card from reception. Endpoint is hotel test. I'll come back to that in a second. In this case, I'm using the ShareRing Pro app for testing instead of Sharing Me. You can use Sharing Me. It doesn't really matter. And then I just go through and look at the information I want to gather. So this is a hotel. Most hotels around the world, if they're not local to you, so if you're traveling overseas, they require verified passport information. So in this case, I'm getting verified. You could change it to Sharing Checked, which is a lower level of verification. That's fine. So I'm grabbing passport information. You could do driver's license or ID card, make it an option between those two. And then also a custom value that I created, which is booking ID. And the booking ID is important because that's how the system's going to find the ID afterwards. And then I put the order in. This is also a new feature, require a liveness check of the user before they share information. That will turn the camera on and make sure they do a facial match before it shares it, and then compare it to their ID. I could also so I've also added in here things like personal phone number, address, date of birth, email address, name, and so on. But we could also put, say, a selfie photo in there and add that to the reservation when I check in, just so that the hotel staff can recognize me when I'm picking up my key or something like that. I mentioned I'd go to endpoint. So in this case, what I've created is a endpoint called hotel test, and then that goes directly to the API endpoint. As I mentioned before, I'm using something called NoIP to get this DNS free sort of domain name to basically point to my private server at home. I create and break these all the time, so this one here is just being used for these sorts of tests. And then finally, all I need to do is go back to the query, open query code, and then what that will do is it'll generate a QR code. So this QR code is created, and basically, in a nutshell, that QR code is there to simply ask a question. So in the app itself, all I need to do is just go to the QR code reader. So I go QR code reader, scan the QR code, I'll do, before I send the data, I'll just jump straight into the console so that you can see it as I share the data. So I've scanned the QR code. I'm just entering the booking ID now, and then I tap send data, do my fingerprint, and then on the screen you'll see a lot of data just get smashed through on the screen. So let's scroll up a little bit and have a look what that actually means. So if you basically have a look, let's scroll up a bit further. Okay, so this is the data that's received from ShareRing Link. So the first thing within the script I said is data received. Every query has a unique ID. So in this case, we're not using it for this test specifically right now, but if we were to sort of expand this code a little bit more, we could use the query ID for session control. So if there's multiple people that are scanning at the same time or something like that, we can basically run session control. But because I'm just running this as a simple Node.js that's running a HTTPS server, we're not really doing any session control at the moment. So the information that's come through, it's verified country, the name, an email address, a date of birth, and this is obviously test data that I've created, a personal address, and booking ID that I entered. And then this here is actually the passport image in what's called base64 format. So that this has been converted so that we can easily send it through as text, and then that'll sort of come through as that. And then also passport issue date, passport number, verified date, and so on. So that API or the console is nice enough to sort of truncate that information so there's not too much that comes through. And that's really about it. That's all that sort of gets sent through to the server. Now what we might do is just jump in and start looking at the code. So why this is important is because now what I'm seeing is the exact data that's being sent through, but the variables or the values that are, the variables that are being used for that. So obviously one of the things that I know about the Cloudbeds API is the variables that they're using for their values are different than this. So what we need to do is actually a bit of a conversion on that information. So let's jump straight into the code. Oops. So what I want to do is I'm using a product called Vim, which is just a basic text editor, and I've created a code already called check-in JavaScript. Now there's quite a lot in here, so I'll step through this bit by bit. It's actually quite simple. It's not really huge. There's a lot of debug code in here though, and that's just because if there's any errors or something like that, it'll show up the errors on the screen as I'm running it. So it means that I don't need to sort of dig too deep to sort of figure out what's happening. So the first is all the includes or the stuff that we need to make sure that npm is using, that Node's using. So all of these here, so we're basically using form and Axios form data, or form data and form are the same, but Axios as well. So then the next thing we do is we import the Cloudbeds API key. This is a key that's provided to us by Cloudbeds, or we've set it up within Cloudbeds. We're using the latest API for that as well. So just to sort of create some of these constants that save us time while we're doing the coding, we're setting those up. And then also we've got the SSL files which are the same as basically what I set up for the sample web service before. So we'll go through that, and then if I scroll down a little bit, so there's all these functions that are created within this. Normally what I probably should have done is actually just done the sharing me stuff first and then these other ones. So I'm going to just scroll down a little bit first just to sort of show you the data that's grabbed from sharing me and, or sorry, ShareRing Link, and how we convert that data. So that's pretty much here. So this is the data that's passed through, and this is what we've done here is we've gone through the Cloudbeds API and made sure that it sort of matches what their variables are. So in this case, we have first name and last name as a single field within sharing. So name.verified. So what we've done here is we've effectively just done a little function to split the name to first name and last name. The email address, so we call it email_address. They've got guest email. We've got guest address. The address we pull from another part, which is up here, because the address we have it in one section. So what we've done is we've split it up based on where the commas are in that case there. And then things like the documents. So we've got passport number verified, and so on and so on. So I'll go back up a little bit. So the first thing we actually want to do within the function is to look up the guest's ID, because within Cloudbeds you don't simply refer to a guest by their email address or something like that. So the first thing we need to do is look at the booking ID or the reservation ID, and then also make sure that the email that is being sent from ShareRing Link matches the email address that's on that reservation as well. And that's really just to make sure that no one else actually checks into that reservation accidentally and by putting the wrong booking ID. So we basically cross-reference that in here. So this is the code that pretty much does that. We've got in the console, it'll say whether or not it's found, but if there's a mismatch there, this is where it sort of gives an error there, or maybe the guest's not found there, and so on. So if there's any other errors, we'll basically just provide the error messages that are thrown from either our service or the other service. This basically just goes through the webhook handler and any modifications. So there's some I mentioned before. So booking ID gets changed to reservation ID, email address to email address, and so on. The next thing we need to do is actually update the guest details. So the booking, we just assume that the only thing that's in the booking is the email address and the booking ID. The booking may have other bits of information in there, but this will just confirm that information if there is other information, and that'll send that through to there. And it's, once again, we've got error handling in here as well. The other one is we upload the passport as well. So we basically handle the passport photo. So what we need to do is basically turn the base64 into a binary file as well, so, and then buffer that. So what we do is we create a local file called passportphoto.jpg on our server, and then we take that passport and send that through using a post command to the booking Cloudbeds website API. And then we just go through and so we've done the guest update, we've uploaded the passport photo, then we verify that there's a room available, and then we simply check in that person, and that's really it. Platform check-in. There are other things we've done, which is just done a month map in terms of converting that. There are fast ways to do this. We also Cloudbeds needs us to use the ISO codes for the countries. So in this case, we're basically just doing a conversion on those. So for this purpose, we're just using a small number. But what you'd normally do is just have a lookup file or lookup service that you can basically use for all the ISO codes. And then that's it. And then the final one is set up the server and start listening. So let's see what that actually looks like, shall we? I've got a server running, so I'll just jump over to that server. Actually, what I'll do before I show you that, I might jump quickly into the Cloudbeds interface because I haven't shown you this at all. So this is really the proper Cloudbeds interface here. So if I go in here, you can see all these reservations that are created. So this is a development account that we've got. I can go in here and you can see, if I scroll down, you've got one here, which is a booking under my name for the checking in on the 6th of the 9th price, and then it's a confirmed booking that was done through booking.com, and the hotel needs to collect the money from me for that. So if I go into that booking there, I can go in and I can see that for the accommodation, it's got all the details there. At the top right, you can see it's a confirmed booking. There's a thing there that says whether it's occupied or not, and you can see that the room's not occupied. They've already assigned a room for my booking. I go to guest details. It's got my first name, last name, email address, and basically no other information about me at all. So let's just jump over to the console. Okay, so I'm opening the app now. I'll jump into sharing, scan the same QR code as I scanned before, confirm the info, I'll make sure I've got the right booking number. And one of the things that we will be doing in the very near future is having the ability so that, say, the hotel can email the QR code to you for check-in, and the QR code would already have the booking number embedded in that. So it's a personalized QR code for you. If you don't have that email, the hotel could just have a QR code on their front door that you scan and then enter the booking number from the email that you get. And then I send that fingerprint and we should be good to go. Yep. So on the left, you can see lots of data flowing through. Brilliant. So that worked. That worked 100%. I'll run through this first, then I'll jump back to webhook. I'll jump back to hotel beds to show you what actually came through. So let's scroll up. Okay. So first thing it did is receive the data that I expected to receive through the webhook. That's perfect. It received the passport image as a base 64 document. So this is all the stuff that it's just received. And then first thing it did is it extracted the reservation ID from the data that was sent. And then on Cloudbeds, it looked up the guest ID and found the reservation ID and the email, and that was a match. So that means it was successful. Next thing it does is starts pushing up all of the details to update my information. So it's still grabbing booking information here. So check-in date, check-out date, total balance. One of the things that we're also going to be adding to the sharing apps is the ability so that if a hotel wants to collect payment, you'll be able to pay through the sharing app as well, or at least do the deposit. You can't do that now, but that is something that we'll do in the future. But it's not really necessary for this functionality that we're introducing here. So then what it does is it starts updating the guest details. So first thing it does is double checks the information, gets that, and then this is the string that's sent to Cloud Beds. And then next thing it does is it's got to upload the passport document. So then it gets the file, it assigns an ID to that file because it's creating that local file as I mentioned before. And then that's successful. And then the next thing it's doing is checking the guest in, and it uses that information, make sure all the right information is in there, make sure a room is allocated. In this case, a room was allocated, and then it checks that person in, and that is done. So let's now jump back to the Cloudbeds system to see what that looks like. So what I'll need to do is I'll just refresh the screen first. And fantastic. So you can see on the right hand side, occupied is now ticked. Up the top there, it says in-house. So the guest is now in-house. Go to guest details. It's got my phone number there. It's got date of birth there. It's got my street address, city, country. It's got passport. It's got the document number in there. It's got the issue date, issuing country, the expiration date. If I go to documents, it'll have the passport photo there as well that's been uploaded. And that is 100% complete and done. And I created this code and this full integration in about, I think end to end is probably about 4 or 5 hours. Now that I've done it once though, I could probably do it again in about 1 hour, one and a half hours. I used a bit of AI to help with some of the code debugging, which is absolutely amazing. And that's basically it. I hope you all enjoyed watching this deep dive into how to create some code that allows you to link ShareRing Link with other third-party systems such as hotel check-in systems. And that brings us to the end of this training video. I hope you enjoyed it. And what I'd love to see is some of you developers out there to start sort of showing us some examples of other integrations that you can do. One of the big things that we will be doing in the near future is adding some of these integrations as endpoints within sharing links. So instead of having to code it yourself, what you'll be able to do is choose an endpoint as either a API or email or cloud beds or other systems as well. And that just makes it easier and easier for places like hotels to integrate with our systems. And we'll also do things like get our products on some of the other marketplaces, like Cloudbeds has a marketplace as well. So that would actually directly target some hotels so they can easily integrate it with their existing Cloudbeds implementation. So it's all very, very exciting with what we've got now and also with what we're developing in the future. So I'll be talking to you again soon during our live stream next week. Really looking forward to that. A lot of things to announce there, a lot of things to discuss around what we're building out for the future as well. And stay tuned and make sure you don't miss it. Thank you.